Sign it. My husband pushed an $840,000 loan guarantee across the kitchen table. When I refused to pick up the pen, his mother looked at the dishes beside the sink and said, "At least make yourself useful for once." My sister-in-law Vanessa did not defend me. She checked her phone and asked how soon the money would reach her company. Then my husband leaned close enough that only I could hear him. "Sign it, Claire, or find somewhere else to live." So I signed. 3 years later, a banker walked toward our table at the biggest business awards ceremony in Columbus. But he did not ask for my husband. He asked for me. And when the MC revealed who controlled the debt on my mother-in-law's house, my husband finally understood that the woman he had treated like unpaid help had been keeping his entire family from collapsing. The Mercer family arrived at the Central Ohio Business Leadership Awards, believing the night belonged to Vanessa. Diane Mercer had spent weeks preparing for it. She had ordered a midnight blue dress, hired a photographer, and arranged a small catered reception at her house before the ceremony. She had even sent a message in the family group chat reminding everyone that they needed to arrive early because important photographs should never look rushed. My name did not appear anywhere in her plans. I had been assigned 3 tasks: confirm the caterer, remember Paul's medication, bring Vanessa's garment bag. I did none of them. For the first time since marrying Ethan Mercer, I arrived according to my own schedule. The ballroom at the Columbus Museum of Art held a little over 400 people. Amber lights reflected from the tall glass walls and white tables curved around a stage decorated with simple gold panels. Maya Reed sat beside me. She wore an emerald green dress and kept one hand resting on the printed program directly over the category no one in the Mercer family had bothered to read. Across the table sat Martin Hale, the founder of one of Ohio's largest regional distribution companies, and the man local reporters incorrectly assumed had built my business for me. He leaned toward me. "Have they recognized you yet?" I glanced 4 rows back. Ethan was adjusting his tie while talking to a real estate developer. Diane was repositioning Vanessa's award nomination card so the event photographer could see her name. Noah sat beside his wife with the same expression he wore whenever his family was preparing to celebrate something he did not fully understand. "No," I said. Martin nodded. "Then they're consistent." Maya tried not to laugh. Vanessa wore ivory. She had positioned herself so the light caught the smooth waves in her blonde hair. Every few seconds, she turned slightly toward the nearest camera. She was nominated for the Retail Rising Star Award for Alder and Vine Home, the furniture and home accessory company Diane described to everyone as the future of the Mercer legacy. Vanessa believed she still owned it. Technically, she owned 28%. The rest belonged to my company. She knew an outside group had taken control when Alder and Vine could no longer pay its suppliers. What she did not know was that the outside group was Lawson and Reed Operations. My company. Ethan knew Lawson and Reed existed. That part mattered. I had never told him I was only volunteering in Cincinnati. I had told him repeatedly that Maya and I had started an operations consulting business. He simply decided it was too small to deserve his attention. When I signed my first client, he called it a nice side project. When I hired my first employee, he asked whether paying someone made sense for a hobby. When I opened a Columbus office, he said, "Just don't let this become another phase that costs us money." He knew my company had a name. He had never asked how many employees it had, how much revenue it earned, or which businesses it served. That was why he did not recognize Lawson and Reed when it appeared in the reports that saved Mercer Homeworks. My husband had not been deceived. He had been uninterested. "There is a difference." "Are you nervous?" Maya whispered. "Number." My hands were trembling, but it was not fear. It was memory. Christmas dinner beside a kitchen sink. A family portrait taken on a day they knew I would be absent. My husband accepting praise for a scheduling system I had created. Vanessa presenting one of my ideas as her own. Diane calling me our little helper in front of guests. Ethan telling me that investing in me would be like throwing money into a hole. The lights dimmed. The first awards began. 40 minutes later, the MC announced the Retail Rising Star category. Diane straightened immediately. Vanessa placed one hand over her heart before her name had been called. And this year's retail rising star is Vanessa Mercer of Alder and Vine Home. The Mercer table erupted. Diane stood. Ethan whistled. Noah kissed Vanessa's cheek. Vanessa walked toward the stage, wearing the surprised smile she had practiced in Diane's living room the night before. She accepted the glass award and turned it slightly so the engraving faced the photographer. I built Alder and Vine because I believe our homes should tell the world who we are, she began. Maya glanced at me. Vanessa thanked Noah. She thanked Ethan. Then she thanked Diane. My second mother believed in me before anyone else did. Diane pressed her hand to her chest. Vanessa did not thank the warehouse employees who packed her orders. She did not thank the suppliers who had waited months to be paid. She did not mention the operations team that had prevented Alder and Vine from closing. She certainly did not mention that the business plan she was now following had originally been mine. When Vanessa returned to her table, Diane embraced her for the cameras. Then the lights dimmed again. The final award of the evening required verified growth employee records, community impact, and at least 3 years of business performance. The MC opened a gold envelope. This year's Distinguished Community Business Leader began with 2 women, 3 folding tables, and less than $6,000. Ethan stopped speaking. The company's first client was a neighborhood bakery that was busy every weekend but still losing money. Diane's hand froze beside her water glass. In 4 years, the organization has helped 37 small businesses avoid closure, created more than 60 full-time jobs, and expanded across 4 states. Vanessa slowly lowered her award. The company later led the successful recovery of 2 well-known Central Ohio businesses, Mercer Homeworks and Alder and Vine Home. No one at the Mercer table moved. The MC looked up. This year's Distinguished Community Business Leader is Claire Lawson, founder and chief executive officer of Lawson and Reed Operations. The room rose around me. Maya squeezed my hand and let go. Martin stood first. Employees from our Cincinnati and Columbus offices stood near the back. Bakery owners, contractors, nonprofit directors, and warehouse managers began applauding. I turned once. Diane's face had gone completely still. Noah stared at Vanessa. Vanessa stared at me. Ethan looked as if the room had shifted beneath his chair. For the first time in years, my husband was not looking through me. He was seeing me. But to understand why that moment mattered, you need to know who I was before the Mercer family reduced me to a woman carrying plates through their kitchen. And why for far too long I helped them do it. 6 years earlier, I was 27 and living in Cincinnati. I worked as a regional operations manager for Mid-River Foods, a grocery distribution company serving stores across Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. It was not glamorous work. No one applauded when I reduced spoiled inventory by 12%. No one photographed me when I rebuilt a delivery schedule after a warehouse flood. But I loved solving problems that everyone else had started calling normal. I supervised 42 employees across 2 facilities. Some had worked in distribution longer than I had been alive. I learned quickly that people did not need a young manager arriving with motivational slogans. They needed clear schedules, working equipment, accurate paychecks, and someone willing to stand beside them when an executive blamed them for a mistake caused 3 levels above their heads. My mother taught me that. She raised me alone after my father left when I was 9. During the day, she worked at a dental office. 3 nights a week, she cleaned a medical building. She never described us as poor. Children notice anyway. I noticed her putting groceries back at the register. I noticed that she drove the same car until the passenger door could no longer open from the outside. I noticed that whenever something went wrong, she sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and said, "First tell the truth about the problem, then decide what we can do before morning." She died from ovarian cancer during my final year of college. She left me no property or investment account. She left me discipline. By 27, I had paid off my student loans, purchased a modest condominium, and saved just under $190,000. I was not wealthy. I was independent. That mattered more. I met Ethan Mercer at a food bank volunteer event in Columbus. My company had donated several truckloads of canned goods, and I had driven north to help coordinate distribution. Ethan was trying to assemble a metal shelving unit without reading the instructions. He attached the same support bar backward twice. "You know the diagram isn't judging you," I said. He looked up. "That sounds exactly like something a diagram would say." I laughed. He handed me the instruction sheet. Show me what I'm doing wrong. We assembled the shelf together. Ethan was funny without performing. He listened when I talked. When I explained my work, he did not interrupt to tell me about his family business. That sounds complicated, he said. It is. And you like it. I like taking something chaotic and making it work. He smiled. You may be the woman my family has been waiting for. At the time, I thought it was a compliment. He asked for my number before the event ended. For the next year, we drove between Cincinnati and Columbus. Ethan remembered that I hated red roses but loved sunflowers. He brought flashlights and food when a storm knocked out electricity at my condo. He called after difficult meetings and listened without trying to solve them for me. He took me to diners where the servers knew his order. I loved him. That part was real. People sometimes ask whether every good memory becomes false when a marriage ends badly. I do not believe that. The beginning can be real, so can the ending. The tragedy is what happens in between. I met Ethan's family 4 months into our relationship. Diane and Paul Mercer lived in a large brick house in Dublin, a comfortable suburb northwest of Columbus. The house had 5 bedrooms, a formal dining room, and a kitchen large enough for 3 people to cook without touching. Mercer Homeworks had begun as a flooring company founded by Ethan's grandfather, Walter, after he returned from the army. Paul expanded it into remodeling. By the time I arrived, the business had a showroom, a warehouse, and 18 employees. It was successful but ordinary. Diane treated it like a royal inheritance. At my first dinner, she asked whether my parents had been married, whether I planned to continue working after children, and whether Lawson was my father's name or my mother's. Later, Ethan apologized in the car. My mom can be intense. She asked whether my parents were married before asking what I do for fun. She doesn't mean anything by it. That sentence became his shield for almost everything she did. She doesn't mean anything by it. It allowed Diane's words to hurt me without ever becoming her responsibility. Walter was different. He was 81 then, with silver hair and a quiet way of watching conversations before entering them. When Diane described my job as making warehouse schedules, Walter turned toward me. What was the largest crisis you managed? He asked. I told him about a flood that disrupted deliveries to 83 stores. How long did you have? 6 days. And you restored service? In 5. Walter nodded. That isn't making schedules. Diane changed the subject. After dinner, Walter found me on the back porch. Don't let people reduce work they don't understand, he said. It was the first honest advice anyone in Ethan's family gave me. I remembered it years later when everyone else had done exactly that. Ethan proposed 14 months after we met. The restaurant where he planned to do it lost our reservation, so he proposed in my condo while we ate Thai food from cardboard containers. It was imperfect and sincere. I said yes before he finished asking. We married the following September in a small church outside Columbus. The Mercer side filled most of the pews. My mother was gone. My father had not been part of my life for years. Several relatives lived too far away to attend. During the reception, I heard Diane tell a cousin, "At least Claire has a real family now." I interpreted it as generosity. Wanting to belong can make you translate insults into promises. 4 months after the wedding, Paul suffered a stroke. He survived, but recovery would take months. Diane called a family meeting from the hospital waiting room. Everyone will need to adjust, she announced. What she meant was that I would adjust. Ethan needed to spend longer hours at Mercer Homeworks. Noah claimed his schedule was impossible because Vanessa was preparing to launch her home accessory business. Diane said she could not manage Paul's appointments alone. My employer allowed me to work remotely for 6 weeks, but driving between Cincinnati and Columbus became exhausting. One night, Ethan sat beside me on the edge of our bed. "We can't keep doing this." "I know. We need to hire someone to help your mother." He hesitated. "That isn't what I meant." I looked at him. "My work is here. Dad is here. Mom is overwhelmed. Your job is great, but you can do operations anywhere." "Not at the level I'm doing it now." "You're talented. You'll find something when things settle down." How long would I be away? 6 months, maybe 9. I asked whether we could rent a nearby apartment instead of moving into Diane's house. That would hurt Mom. In the Mercer family, Diane's discomfort was treated as an emergency. Everyone else's pain was treated as something they should manage quietly. My supervisor offered unpaid leave. I should have accepted it. Instead, I resigned because I trusted Ethan when he said the move was temporary. My coworkers held a farewell lunch in the conference room. They gave me a framed map showing every facility I had managed. Around the edges, they wrote messages. You taught me how to lead. Call us when you build the next thing. This team will never be the same. I packed my office into 3 boxes. One contained books. One contained my degree and the photograph of my mother. The third contained the framed map. I drove north on Interstate 71, believing I was pausing my career to protect my marriage. I did not understand that the Mercer family would later use the pause they requested as evidence that I had never been capable. At first I was glad I had moved. Paul's therapy schedule was demanding. I drove him 3 times a week, organized his medications, and helped him practice exercises that left him angry and exhausted. Paul apologized constantly. You had a real career, he said one afternoon. I still do. I believed that when I answered. Within 8 months, Paul could drive short distances and spend several afternoons each week at the showroom. That should have been the moment I returned to work. Instead, Diane discovered how convenient my availability had become. Her housekeeper retired. Diane said hiring a stranger would make Paul uncomfortable. The family accountant needed old receipts organized. Diane said I was good with details. Mercer Homeworks held a customer event. Diane said no one else could coordinate the food. When Thanksgiving approached, she handed me a list containing 47 tasks. Since you're not working, this should be manageable. Not working. I was caring for Paul, cooking for 4 adults, shopping, cleaning, and organizing unpaid business invoices. Because no one paid me, Diane considered the work imaginary. Whenever I mentioned returning to full-time employment, Ethan found another reason to delay. Dad is doing better, but Mom still needs stability. The business is entering a growth period. We should wait until after the holidays. Why not enjoy having some time for yourself? Time for myself usually meant time available to everyone else. Vanessa's career, meanwhile, was treated as sacred. She had married Noah 2 years before Ethan married me. She understood Diane immediately. Vanessa complimented the house. She asked for family recipes. She posted photographs of Sunday dinners with captions about tradition, legacy, and strong women. She called Diane Mom before her wedding. I tried that once. Diane smiled and said, let's not force intimacy. With Vanessa, intimacy was encouraged. With me, it remained a test with no finish line. Vanessa started Alder and Vine as an online page featuring decorated rooms and links to furniture. She had excellent taste and a natural ability to make ordinary products look expensive. She was also terrible with money. She ignored invoices. She ordered too much inventory because half-empty shelves looked bad in photographs. She blamed employees whenever customers complained. Diane saw only the polished images. At family dinners, Vanessa was introduced as an entrepreneur. I was introduced as the organized one. The difference was always clear. Vanessa created value. I cleaned up after it. The first Christmas after Paul's stroke, Diane hosted 32 relatives. I spent 2 days preparing food. Vanessa arrived 40 minutes late, carrying 1 tray of cookies from a bakery. Diane placed them in the center of the dessert table. Vanessa saved Christmas, she announced. When dinner began, there was no place card for me. Diane looked around the table. Claire, would you mind eating in the kitchen? Then you can watch the warming dishes. Every adult heard her. I looked at Ethan. He would later claim he had been caught off guard. At the time, he said it might be easier, babe. Easier? The path of least resistance in that family always ran directly through me. I carried my plate into the kitchen and sat beside the sink. 10 minutes later, Vanessa came in for wine. She leaned against the counter while I ate. You shouldn't take Diane personally. I don't. You do. She smiled. Diane respects women who build something. Once you find your thing, she'll treat you differently. I had a thing. The distribution job. I managed 2 facilities. Vanessa poured her wine. Right. But family life changes people's priorities. She returned to the dining room. Later, I found Ethan in our bedroom. Your mother made me eat Christmas dinner in the kitchen. She was stressed. You agreed with her. I didn't agree, I just didn't want a scene. She created the scene. He exhaled. Claire, why does everything have to become a bigger issue? I ate beside the sink. And I'm sorry you felt excluded. Not I'm sorry we excluded you. I'm sorry you felt excluded. An apology designed to leave the offense untouched. That night, I lay awake while Ethan slept beside me. It was the first time I understood that my husband's kindness was most reliable when it cost him nothing. In private, he could comfort me. In public, he would not protect me if protection required disappointing his mother. The family wall filled the upstairs hallway. Diane had arranged school photographs, wedding portraits, vacations, and pictures of grandchildren. After our wedding, I waited for a photograph of Ethan and me to appear. 1 month passed, then 6, then a year. Vanessa and Noah's wedding portrait occupied the largest frame. When I offered Diane a copy of ours, she looked at the wall. It is already balanced. Balanced, as if my face might disturb the composition. 18 months into our marriage, Diane arranged a new family portrait. I learned about it on Facebook. Everyone stood beneath a maple tree in the backyard. Paul sat at the center. Diane stood behind him. Ethan, Noah, and Vanessa were arranged beside them. Even the family dog wore a ribbon matching their clothes. The caption read, "Nothing matters more than family." The photograph had been taken on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in Cincinnati teaching a workshop at a women's employment center. They knew where I was. When I returned home, the framed photograph was leaning against the hallway wall. "You took this without me," I said. Diane lifted it. "The photographer was only available today. You knew I would be gone." We couldn't coordinate 5 schedules around one person. Vanessa came down the stairs and stopped behind her. Diane examined the frame. It turned out beautifully. I looked at Ethan. He stood near the front door holding his keys. "You could have called me." Mom said the photographer had one opening. I would have driven back. It was just a picture. Diane looked at me with controlled impatience. "People who are secure in their place don't need to appear in every photograph." Vanessa lowered her head. She was hiding a smile. I walked upstairs without answering. My framed mid-river map remained inside one of the boxes in our closet. I placed it on the bed and read the messages from my former coworkers. "You taught me how to lead. Call us when you build the next thing." I opened a rental website and looked at apartments in Cincinnati. Then Paul called because he could not find one of his medications. I closed the laptop and went downstairs. The following morning, Ethan brought me coffee. "I hate when we're like this." I waited for an apology. Instead, he said, "You knew Mom could be controlling. I didn't know you would help her erase me." "That's dramatic. The picture is hanging in the hall. We'll take another." When he checked the time, "Can we not do this before work?" There was never another photograph. For the next year, I helped Mercer Homeworks more than anyone admitted. The company had grown too quickly. Crews arrived at the wrong houses. Materials were ordered twice. Customers waited weeks for updates because no one knew who was responsible for calling them. One evening, Ethan came home furious after losing a large remodeling contract. "Our people can't follow a basic schedule," he said. I asked to see the current process. He handed me a stack of papers because he wanted someone to agree that his employees were incompetent. Instead, I found a system designed to fail. Salespeople made promises without checking crew availability. Warehouse staff did not receive final material lists. Project managers kept separate calendars. For 3 weeks, I rebuilt the scheduling process. I created one shared project board, a customer update schedule, and a simple order checklist. Complaints fell almost immediately. Missed appointments dropped. A supplier stopped charging emergency delivery fees. Ethan was thrilled. A month later, he invited 2 clients to dinner. One of them asked how Mercer Homeworks had improved so quickly. Ethan leaned back. "I rebuilt the entire operation." The man looked toward me. "Claire helped, didn't she?" "Ethan said you used to work in distribution." Before I could answer, Ethan laughed. "Claire doesn't really understand construction. She keeps things organized at home. That gives me room to handle the business." The client smiled politely. I carried the dessert plates into the kitchen. Every system he was describing had been mine. He did not merely fail to credit me. He used my work to prove I did not understand his business. That night I confronted him. "You told them you rebuilt the operation." "I did. I created the system. You made some spreadsheets. I spent 3 weeks fixing scheduling, purchasing, and customer communication, and I implemented it." "You told them I didn't understand the business." He rubbed his forehead. "Why do you always need public recognition?" "I wanted you to tell the truth. I'm the one responsible if it fails. And when it succeeds," he stared at me. "This is exactly why working together is a bad idea. You take everything personally." I stopped trying to explain. A week later, Vanessa asked me how I would improve Alder and Vine. We were alone in the kitchen while Diane and Ethan spoke in the living room. "I'm not asking for a full consultation," she said, "just your opinion." I should have refused. Instead, I looked at the numbers she showed me. Her largest problem was the showroom. It cost too much, carried too much inventory, and attracted people who photographed products before purchasing cheaper versions online. You need a smaller appointment-only studio, I said. Keep samples instead of full inventory. Let customers see complete room collections online, then come in for design sessions. Vanessa listened carefully. You think people would book appointments if you offer a consultation credit that applies to purchases. 3 weeks later, Diane called another family dinner. Vanessa stood beside the fireplace with presentation boards. I've designed a completely new retail model, she announced. A smaller appointment-only studio supported by online room collections. It was my idea. Almost word for word. Diane looked delighted. This is what true vision looks like. Ethan raised his glass. Brilliant. Vanessa met my eyes. Some people can identify problems, she said. But leadership means turning ideas into something real. The room applauded. I sat with my hands in my lap. That was the moment Vanessa stopped being only the favored daughter-in-law. She became someone willing to steal from me and then use the theft to humiliate me. Walter Mercer died the following spring. He was 84. During his final months, I visited him twice a week at the assisted living center. Diane visited on Sundays. Ethan went when work allowed. Noah and Vanessa posted photographs of Walter online but rarely visited. He never complained. One afternoon, he asked about the workshop I taught in Cincinnati. I explained that many women there had left work to care for children or parents and were struggling to re-enter the workforce. You come alive when you talk about that, he said. I like being useful. You're useful at Diane's house. I looked at him. That doesn't mean you're respected. Walter reached into the drawer beside his bed and handed me a brass key. What does this open? My old workshop. The workshop sat behind a red brick warehouse on the west side of Columbus. Walter had used it when Mercer Homeworks was still a flooring company. What's there? A letter? For whom? For the person holding the key. I tried to give it back. He closed my fingers around it. Claire, everyone else in this family opens things while thinking about what they can take. His hand trembled. You still look at something and ask what it needs. Walter died 12 days later. At the funeral, Diane cried with graceful restraint. Vanessa stood beside her holding her arm. I sat behind them. Relatives praised Vanessa for helping organize everything. I had selected the funeral home, coordinated Walter's military honors, and contacted the assisted living center. No one mentioned it. After the service, I drove to Walter's warehouse. The side door opened with the brass key. The workshop smelled of sawdust and machine oil. Walter's tools still hung above the workbench, each one outlined on the pegboard. A metal cabinet stood beneath the window. Inside, I found photographs, notebooks, an army jacket, and a thick envelope with my name written across the front. Claire Lawson Mercer. He had included my maiden name. Inside was a letter. Claire, if you are reading this, I am gone and my family has probably shown you what I was afraid they had become. I watched Diane turn gratitude into expectation. I watched Ethan accept your sacrifices because accepting them was easier than defending you. I should have spoken sooner. The warehouse and workshop are yours. I transferred them before I became too ill to manage them. My accountant will help with what remains. It is not a fortune. It needs repairs. But it gave me my first chance and perhaps it can give you yours. Do not remain in a place that destroys you because of this building. Leave tomorrow if you need to. But whether you stay or leave, stop asking my family to tell you what you are worth. Build until their opinion is no longer relevant. Walter. I read the letter 3 times. Then I sat on the concrete floor and cried. Not because Walter had left me a building, because he had seen me. For years I had wondered whether I was overly sensitive, too demanding, or unwilling to adapt. Walter's letter told me the problem was real. He had noticed Christmas dinner, the missing photograph, Ethan taking credit for my work, the way Diane spoke to me. His accountant confirmed that the warehouse belonged to me. There was no requirement that I remain married. No hidden condition, no reason to stay for the property. I could leave immediately. I almost did. I sat in Walter's workshop until after midnight looking at apartment listings. But leaving safely was not as simple as packing one suitcase. Most of my savings had become tied to the household after Paul's stroke. Ethan controlled several joint accounts. My resume contained a growing gap. I had been away from full-time work for years. And despite everything, part of me still loved the man Ethan had been. That was the hardest truth. People do not always stay because they are weak. Sometimes they stay because hope dies slowly. I decided on one thing that night. Whether my marriage survived or not, my dependence on the Mercer family would end. The following morning, I called Maya Reed. She answered on the second ring. Is everything okay? Number. The word surprised both of us. For years, I had described my marriage as complicated, stressful, or temporary. Never wrong. Nothing is okay, I said. Maya and I met 3 days later at a Cincinnati coffee shop. She had worked with me at Mid River before leaving to manage operations for a medical supply company. Maya was direct, practical, and almost impossible to impress. I told her everything. Christmas dinner. The photograph. Ethan taking credit for my system. Vanessa stealing my idea. The family meeting Diane had scheduled for the following weekend to discuss Walter's savings. When I finished, Maya looked at me for a long time. You know what I'm going to say. That I should leave. Yes, I may. What are you waiting for? I need income. I need a plan. And part of me keeps thinking Ethan will finally understand. Maya's expression softened. He may understand one day. That sounds hopeful. It isn't. Understanding after someone loses you is not the same as protecting them while they're there. I looked down at my coffee. Then I told her about Walter's warehouse. Maya listened. When I finished, she pulled a paper napkin toward her. What did you want to do before your life became everyone else's emergency? Operations consulting. For what kind of clients? Small businesses. The ones that are busy but still losing money. The ones that can't afford a full-time operations manager. Maya uncapped a pen. What would we charge? That was how Lawson and Reed operations began. 2 women, 1 napkin, less than $6,000 in initial expenses. Walter's warehouse was not ready for clients. Part of the roof leaked, the heating system barely worked, and 2 sections were rented to contractors. So Maya and I rented 2 desks in a shared office in Cincinnati. I told Ethan the truth. Maya and I are starting a small consulting business. He looked up from his phone. What kind? Operations support for small companies. That's nice. I'll be in Cincinnati Tuesdays and Fridays. Are you still doing the employment center workshops? Yes. Then at least the driving won't be only for the business. Only for the business. As if my work needed charitable activity attached to justify the gasoline. Diane approved too. A little project may be good for you, she said, as long as it doesn't interfere with the house. Our first client was Morning June Bakery. The owner, Rachel Alvarez, worked 70 hours a week. Customers lined up every Saturday, but the bakery still lost money. Within 2 days, I found the problem. They produced according to habit rather than actual sales. The displays looked full, but nearly 20% of the food was thrown away. We tracked purchases, changed the production schedule, and reduced waste. 2 months later, Morning June posted its first profitable month. Rachel cried when she saw the numbers. I thought I was failing. You weren't failing, I said. Your system was. She referred us to an HVAC contractor. That contractor referred us to a non-profit thrift store. For a few months, progress felt almost easy. Then reality arrived. Our 4th major client was a family-owned furniture shop. The owner told us the company's problem was inventory. It was not. He had hidden more than $200,000 in unpaid taxes and supplier debt. Maya and I discovered it after spending weeks rebuilding his purchasing system. When the truth came out, he blamed us publicly. He told other business owners that Lawson and Reed had made his problems worse. 2 clients paused their contracts. We lost nearly $12,000. I used part of my savings to cover payroll for Jordan, our first employee. For 3 nights, I barely slept. Maya found me sitting alone in the shared office on a Friday evening. We can close, I said. Number. We have 3 clients. 4. 1 hasn't paid. Then 3.5. I'm serious. So am I. I put money into this because I believed I still knew what I was doing. You do. I missed hidden debt. The owner lied. I should have found it sooner. Maya sat across from me. You know what your problem is? I'm sure you're going to tell me. You think competence means never being deceived. It doesn't. It means correcting the process so the same deception cannot happen twice. We created a new financial review requirement for every client. The furniture shop closed. Lawson and Reed survived. But the experience changed me. Success no longer felt inevitable. Every payroll mattered. Every client mattered. Every mistake had a cost. That made what came later more meaningful. The next setback came from Diane. I had scheduled a presentation with the owner of a 7-location childcare company. It could have doubled our revenue. The night before, Diane appeared in our bedroom. Paul has an appointment in the morning. I can't take him. I have a client meeting in Cincinnati. She looked surprised. Reschedule it. I've already rescheduled once. Paul's health is more important than a meeting. Ethan can take him. Ethan has work. So do I. Diane stared at me. No, Claire. Ethan has a company with employees depending on him. You have a few consulting clients. Ethan entered while she was speaking. What's going on? I explained. He did not even pause. Take Dad. Maya can handle the meeting. It's my presentation. Then move it. The owner is flying in. Diane folded her arms. I cannot believe we are arguing about this. Paul heard us from the hallway. I can call a cab, he said. Diane turned toward him. You are not taking a cab after a stroke. I had the stroke 2 years ago. Ethan looked irritated. Claire, please, just do this for the family. I called Maya. She gave the presentation alone. The childcare company chose another firm. When I told Ethan, he said maybe it wasn't meant to be. I looked at him across the dinner table. You cost us our largest opportunity. That's unfair. You asked me to cancel the meeting. My father needed help. Your father offered to take a cab. Why are you keeping score? Because everyone else had been keeping score for years. They simply counted my sacrifices as zero. That evening, Ethan noticed a Lawson & Reed invoice on my laptop. He saw the monthly amount. Someone pays you this much. Yes. For consulting. Yes. He looked genuinely surprised. Then he laughed. Not bad for a side hustle. He knew. He saw the money. He still chose not to take it seriously. That was why the eventual reveal would not depend on a secret identity. It would depend on the size of his arrogance. The family meeting about Walter's savings took place 2 weeks later. Diane sat at the head of the dining table. Ethan sat beside her. Noah and Vanessa faced me. Paul occupied the chair near the window. Diane began without preface. Walter left approximately $320,000 in savings. She spoke as though Walter's money had become hers through the force of her confidence. After discussing it with Ethan, we believe the best use is investing in Alder and Vine. Vanessa lowered her eyes with practiced humility. She has the opportunity to open a showroom in Easton. Diane continued. With proper support, she could become the public face of the next generation. I looked at Ethan. The decision had already been made. Still, I spoke. I'd like to ask for $35,000. Diane's expression changed. For what? To expand Lawson & Reed. We have clients, 1 employee, and a waiting list. The money would pay for software insurance and 6 months of office expenses. Vanessa shifted in her seat. You said it was a small side business. It started small. Diane looked at Ethan. He leaned back. Claire, this is not the same situation. Why? Vanessa has an established brand. Alder and Vine lost money last year. Vanessa looked up sharply. That was planned growth. You were late paying 2 suppliers. You don't know my company. You showed me the reports when you asked for advice. Diane raised one hand. That is enough. I kept my voice calm. I'm asking for roughly 1/10 of what you're giving Vanessa. I can repay it. Ethan's face hardened. He hated being challenged in front of his mother. Vanessa has something real, he said. Investing in her makes sense. And investing in me, he held my eyes, would be throwing money into a hole. No one moved. He continued. You've been out of the workforce for years. You have a few clients and a rented desk. Be realistic. I left the workforce because your father became ill. That was your choice. The sentence entered the room and remained there. My choice. He had asked me to resign. He had promised it would be temporary. Now he had rewritten the sacrifice as a personal failure. Diane nodded. Ambition is admirable when ability supports it. Otherwise, it becomes vanity. Vanessa looked toward the window. The corner of her mouth moved. Paul looked down. Noah said nothing. I studied Ethan for 3 seconds. I did not cry. I did not argue. Something inside me closed quietly. Understood, I said. Diane returned to discussing Vanessa's showroom. Within 15 minutes, the money belonged to Alder and Vine. Ethan placed a hand on Vanessa's shoulder. This family believes in you. Then he left the room without looking at me. I carried the coffee cups into the kitchen because everyone expected me to. Behind me, they opened champagne. I stood at the sink and listened to them celebrate the woman who had stolen my idea while the man I married told her she deserved belief. That night, I drove to Walter's warehouse. The frame sentence had not yet been placed above his workbench. His letter lay on the table. Build until their opinion is no longer relevant. I read it once. Then I called Maya. We're not closing. I know. How? Because you only call after midnight when you've made a decision. I'm putting every dollar I can safely use into Lawson and Reed. Maya was quiet. Then tomorrow we make sure it's worth it. The next 2 years were not a smooth rise. Lawson and Reed gained clients and lost some. Jordan made a scheduling error that delayed a client's deliveries for 3 days. We paid part of the cost ourselves. One customer refused to follow our recommendations, then blamed us when the same problems continued. A warehouse system we purchased failed during our busiest month. Maya and I argued about hiring. She wanted to expand faster. I was afraid of owing people salaries I could not guarantee. Once, after a payroll transfer left our account with less than $800, I sat in my car and cried before driving back to Diane's house. When I entered, she handed me a grocery list. You're late. I had a work problem. She looked at the bags in my hands. Whatever it is, don't bring it into the house. The sentence almost made me laugh. I had spent years absorbing every problem in that house. My problems were the only ones forbidden from crossing the door. Lawson and Reed continued because our work produced real results. Morning June opened a second location. The HVAC contractor reduced missed appointments by more than half. The thrift store nonprofit stopped losing donated items and used the savings to open a job training room. One of our clients introduced us to Martin Hale. He did not discover me at a glamorous conference. He met me in the back room of a bakery. Morning June had begun supplying breakfast items to several Hale distribution facilities. Martin visited the bakery after Rachel asked him to consider a larger contract. He arrived during a staff meeting. Rachel introduced me. Claire is the reason we're still open. Martin looked at the production board I had designed. He asked questions for 40 minutes. How did we calculate waste? How did we combine small supplier orders? Why had labor costs fallen without reducing staff? I answered. 2 weeks later, he invited Lawson and Reed to test a shared purchasing program through one Hale warehouse. It was not a gift. We paid for access. If the pilot failed, we would lose months of work and nearly all our remaining cash. For the first 6 weeks, it nearly did. Orders were combined incorrectly. 2 clients received the wrong packaging materials. One threatened to sue. I spent 4 nights at the warehouse with Maya and Jordan rebuilding the process. At 3 in the morning on the 4th night, Martin found me sleeping in a chair beside a loading dock. You could quit, he said. I know. Why haven't you? Because the problem is fixable. He nodded. That's the right answer. The pilot succeeded in month 3. Small clients reduced purchasing costs. Hale filled unused truck capacity. Lawson and Reed gained a reputation for solving problems larger firms ignored. Martin later joined our advisory board. He invested only after 18 months of verified results. That mattered. He did not rescue me. He saw what we had already built and decided it was worth joining. By then, Ethan knew Lawson and Reed was growing. He simply misunderstood how much. I told him when we hired our 5th employee. He said, be careful. Managing people is different from freelancing. I told him when we opened a small Columbus office inside Walter's warehouse. He said, at least Grandpa's building is finally useful. I told him we had clients in Kentucky and Indiana. He asked whether the travel costs were worth it. Once I appeared in a local business article. The photograph showed Maya and me standing inside Morning June. I left the newspaper on the kitchen counter. Ethan saw it. Nice picture, he said. Did you read the article? I skimmed it. The article described our client growth and the Hale pilot. He still called Lawson and Reed my consulting thing. There is no secrecy more effective than another person's certainty that you cannot be important. Meanwhile, Alder and Vine was failing. The Easton showroom attracted attention but little profit. Vanessa spent heavily on displays, events, and a luxury SUV she claimed was necessary for client meetings. Suppliers began demanding payment. Diane saw social media photographs and assumed the business was thriving. At Thanksgiving, she raised her glass. To Vanessa, who has shown this family what courage and ambition can build. Everyone raised a glass. I did too. Ethan looked at Vanessa with pride. No one asked why I had received 3 calls from employees during dinner. No one knew Lawson and Reed had reached 31 clients. No one knew the company now employed 22 people. More importantly, no one knew Mercer Homeworks was approaching its own crisis. Ethan had expanded the showroom too quickly. Material costs rose. 2 remodeling projects went far over budget. Suppliers stopped extending generous credit. Late notices appeared in the mail. Paul quietly asked whether I could review the numbers. I will if Ethan asks. He never did. Instead, Mercer Homeworks hired Lawson and Reed. Not directly at first. Martin recommended us through a banker who was helping the company avoid closure. Ethan received a proposal from Lawson and Reed. Our logo appeared on the first page. He brought it to dinner. This is your firm, right? Yes. They want to reorganize our projects and purchasing. That's what we do. He flipped through the pages. Did you write this? My team did. Can they handle a company our size? I looked at him. Read the client list. He did. For the first time, he saw names he recognized. Businesses with dozens of employees, a regional restaurant group, 3 construction suppliers. He looked surprised but not humbled. Martin Hale is involved. He advises us. So this is really his operation. Number. Ethan smiled as if I were protecting my pride. Either way, it's a strong proposal. Mercer Homeworks signed. Maya led the meetings because I refused to let my marriage interfere with the company's decisions. Ethan accepted instructions from my employees. He followed schedules created under my authority. He praised Lawson and Reed at dinner. Their systems are disciplined, he told Diane. Whoever built the company understands real operations. I sat across from him. He knew I was the founder. He had read my name on the proposal. Yet because Martin advised us, Ethan convinced himself the serious decisions must belong to Martin. One evening I corrected him. I built Lawson and Reed. I know you started it. No, I run it. He laughed softly. Claire, there's no shame in having an experienced partner behind you. Martin does not run my company. Okay. The word meant he did not believe me. That hurt more than ignorance would have. The evidence was in front of him. He simply preferred a version in which my success required a man. Lawson and Reed stabilized Mercer Homeworks. We reduced project delays, renegotiated supplier schedules, and closed the oversized showroom Ethan had opened against Paul's advice. 21 employees kept their jobs. Ethan credited his own willingness to make hard decisions. I stopped correcting him. The truth was continuing toward him whether I carried it or not. Vanessa's collapse came next. Alder and Vine owed suppliers nearly $260,000. The showroom lease was months behind. Instead of admitting the business was failing, Vanessa told Diane she had an opportunity to expand into Indianapolis. Diane believed her. She has momentum, Diane announced. This is when strong families increase support. Ethan could not move more money from Mercer Homeworks because Lawson and Reed monitored its spending. So Diane offered the Dublin house as collateral for a new loan. Paul objected. Walter always said not to borrow against your roof. Walter was afraid of growth, Diane replied. Vanessa presented projections that assumed sales would nearly triple within a year. I read the summary. They're unrealistic. Vanessa smiled. You said the same thing about the Easton showroom. No, I suggested a smaller appointment-only studio. You took the idea and added an expensive showroom. Diane looked irritated. Can we discuss the future without reopening old grievances? A bank eventually approved an $840,000 loan using the house and parts of Mercer Homeworks as collateral. Because Ethan and I were married and several accounts were joint, the lender required my guarantee. Ethan placed the papers on the kitchen table. Sign it. I read the first page. This is not expansion money. $240,000 is going directly to overdue accounts. That's normal. Vanessa told everyone the company was profitable. Vanessa sat across from me in a cream-colored coat. Cash flow and profit are different things. You'd understand that if your company handled real retail. My company had more employees than hers. I let the insult pass. What happens if Alder and Vine can't repay? Ethan's jaw tightened. The house and business assets secure the loan. And after those, the personal guarantees. I pushed the papers back. Number. Diane entered the kitchen. What is the problem? Claire is refusing to sign, Vanessa said. Diane looked at me as if I had failed to carry a tray correctly. This family supported your little business. No, it didn't. You used Walter's building. Walter gave it to me because you were married to Ethan. He gave it to me because he believed in my work. Diane's face hardened. Do not turn this into another emotional scene. She glanced at the dishes beside the sink. At least make yourself useful for once. Sign what Ethan needs and stop pretending your little office makes you an expert on family responsibility. I looked at my husband. He said nothing. Ethan, he leaned toward me. Sign it, Claire. Number. His voice dropped. If you refuse, you're telling everyone you don't care whether this family survives. Vanessa created the debt. This isn't about blame. It's always about blame when the person asking for help is me. He stood. Sign it or find somewhere else to live. The kitchen became silent. Paul was standing in the doorway. Noah stared at Ethan. Vanessa looked impatient rather than shocked. I realized Ethan believed the house was his leverage. He believed my company was still too small to support me. He believed removing my room would remove my choices. I picked up the pen, not because he had won, because by then I had an apartment available above Morning June. Maya had a copy of my separation plan. My premarital savings were secure, and Lawson and Reed had already begun reviewing Alder and Vine at the request of 3 unpaid suppliers. I signed. Diane smiled. There, that wasn't difficult. Vanessa immediately asked when the money would arrive. Ethan squeezed my shoulder. Thank you. I looked at his hand until he removed it. That evening they opened champagne. I washed 1 glass. Then I left the remaining dishes in the sink and went upstairs. Diane called after me. Claire, the kitchen isn't finished. I continued walking. It was the first household task I had deliberately left undone in almost 5 years. The Indianapolis showroom never opened. Most of the loan disappeared into old debt. Vanessa used part of it to maintain the appearance that Alder and Vine was growing. She paid for a launch event that promoted a store that did not exist. She leased another vehicle. She charged a New York trip to supplier research. Within 6 months, the bank knew something was wrong. 3 major suppliers refused further shipments. Lawson and Reed offered Alder and Vine a restructuring plan. We would pay essential suppliers, close the expensive showroom, and preserve the online business. In exchange, Lawson and Reed would receive majority ownership and control over spending. Vanessa had no better option. She signed. She told Diane it was a temporary partnership. She did not tell her she now owned less than 1/3 of the company. She also did not know I had approved the plan. I stayed out of meetings. Maya handled them. Vanessa knew Lawson and Reed was my company, but she had spent years hearing Diane and Ethan dismiss it. She assumed Martin controlled every major decision. She believed I held a title while someone else held the power. That assumption made her reckless. At a family dinner, she described Lawson and Reed as the support firm Martin Hale uses. I corrected her. Martin doesn't own Lawson and Reed. She smiled. Technically, maybe not. Ethan changed the subject before I could answer. They all had the information. None of them had the humility required to understand it. Lawson and Reed closed the showroom, reduced the product line, and moved Alder and Vine into shared warehouse space. The business slowly improved. Diane credited Vanessa. At Christmas, she gave a toast to the woman who refused to give up on her dream. I sat across from Vanessa, knowing my employees had worked nights to keep her suppliers from walking away. The praise no longer made me angry. It made me tired. That was when I knew my marriage was over. I did not want Ethan to discover my value so he would love me properly. I wanted his discovery to arrive after I no longer needed anything from it. Lawson and Reed grew to 51 employees. We renovated part of Walter's warehouse and opened our Columbus headquarters there. We kept his workbench. Above it, I framed 1 line from his letter. Build until their opinion is no longer relevant. The company's growth attracted local attention. Maya handled most media appearances because she enjoyed them more than I did. Martin was better known than either of us, so reporters often photographed him at our events. That reinforced the Mercer family's favorite misunderstanding. Ethan once returned from a charity dinner excited because he had spoken briefly with Martin. I told him how much Lawson and Reed helped Mercer Homeworks. What did he say? That all decisions go through the principal. I waited. Did he say who that was? No, but whoever he is, he has serious discipline. Why do you assume it's a man? Ethan poured himself a drink. Deals like that usually are. You have met the founder. He looked at me. I know you founded it, Claire. I'm talking about whoever controls the serious capital. I said nothing. He had finally stated the problem clearly. To Ethan, I could start something. I could organize it. I could even stand in front of it for photographs. But real power still had to belong to a man behind me. Several months before the award ceremony, the bank decided to sell the troubled $840,000 loan. Payments were late and the Indianapolis plan had collapsed. Lawson and Reed purchased the loan as part of the restructuring of both family businesses. The decision was not emotional. It allowed us to protect Mercer Homeworks employees, prevent the bank from suddenly seizing equipment, and give the family time to create a repayment plan. It also meant Diane's house was no longer controlled by a faceless bank. It was controlled by the company she had repeatedly called My Little Project. I did not tell her. The loan records were private. The truth would arrive when it needed to. The awards nomination arrived in March. Martin submitted Lawson and Reed without warning me. The committee reviewed 4 years of results, employee records, client testimonials, and community work. In June, I learned I had won. Vanessa had already announced her Retail Rising Star nomination. Diane talked about it constantly. She ordered a dress. She hired a photographer. She sent the family group message assigning me tasks. I replied with one sentence. I will be attending under my own schedule. Please make other arrangements. Diane called immediately. What does that mean? It means I won't be managing everyone tomorrow. This is Vanessa's night. I know. Then why are you being difficult? I have responsibilities of my own. What responsibilities? You'll hear about them at the ceremony. She became quiet. Is your company receiving some volunteer certificate? Number. Claire, please do not embarrass the family by trying to compete with Vanessa. I won't need to compete. I ended the call. The night before the ceremony, Diane hosted dinner. Champagne chilled beside Vanessa's nomination plaque. Ethan raised his glass. Tomorrow the city will see what this family already knows. He looked at Vanessa. We have always known who deserves our faith. I raised my glass. To being seen clearly. Diane smiled as if I had agreed with her. After dinner, I packed one suitcase. Ethan entered while I was closing it. Where are you going? To the Columbus apartment after the ceremony. For work. For myself. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means we need to talk tomorrow. Why not now? Because tonight you would explain everything away. He looked genuinely confused. Is this about Mom again? No, it's about you. He slept beside me for the final time without understanding what I meant. At the award ceremony, Vanessa accepted her trophy first. Then my name was called. The applause followed me toward the stage. I accepted the award with both hands and looked over the room. I could see the young operations manager I had once been. The bride who believed love made every sacrifice safe. The daughter-in-law eating Christmas dinner beside a sink. The woman sitting on Walter's workshop floor. The founder covering payroll from her own savings. The wife listening to her husband call her company a hobby. They were all part of me. None of them stood alone anymore. I placed the award on the podium. 4 years ago, I asked my family for a small investment to restart the career I had given up to help them. The room quieted. Someone I loved told me investing in me would be throwing money into a hole. Behind me, I heard a chair move. I believed him for one night. A few people laughed softly. The following morning, I called my friend Maya. We rented 2 desks and found one bakery that needed help. I thanked Maya. I thanked our employees. I thanked the business owners who trusted us before there was any reason to recognize our name. Then I looked toward the Mercer table. Lawson and Reed was not built to prove my family wrong. It became successful when I stopped needing their opinion to define what was possible. The applause began before I stepped away. Martin approached the microphone. I need to correct an assumption I have heard too often, he said. I do not own Lawson and Reed. I do not direct its investments. I advise Claire Lawson when she asks. He turned slightly toward me. When my company participates in one of Lawson and Reed's projects, I follow her decision. Then he looked directly toward Ethan. Claire signs my contracts, not the other way around. The room went silent. That was the first layer of the truth. The MC returned and completed the company profile. He described Lawson and Reed's work across 4 states. Then he named 2 companies whose recoveries had been verified as part of the award review. Mercer Homeworks, Alder and Vine Home. Diane's hand stopped moving. Ethan turned toward Vanessa. Vanessa stared at me. The MC continued. Lawson and Reed now serves as the controlling owner of Alder and Vine and the lead restructuring partner for Mercer Homeworks. No complicated list. No hidden chain of companies. One sentence. The company Diane had mocked now controlled the business she celebrated. The company Ethan called a side hustle had saved his employees. The woman Vanessa treated like household help had approved every dollar keeping Alder and Vine open. That was the second layer. I stepped off the stage. People reached toward me as I passed. Congratulations. Well deserved. Thank you for saving our company. Words from strangers that my own family had withheld for years. Ethan reached me in the hallway outside the ballroom. Claire. I kept walking until the noise faded. Then I turned. His face had lost the confidence it carried into the ceremony. How long, he asked. 4 years. You run all of it? Yes. And Martin advises me. You told me it was a consulting firm. It is. You never said it was this big. I told you when we hired people. I told you when we opened the Columbus office. I showed you the article. I didn't understand. You didn't ask. He stepped closer. Why didn't you make me understand? The question nearly made me laugh. I spent years trying to make you understand that I mattered. That's not fair. You accepted my system at Mercer Homeworks and told clients you created it. He looked away. You watched your mother send me to the kitchen on Christmas. She was under pressure. You stood in a family photograph without me. The photographer. You called my business a hobby after seeing what clients paid us. I didn't know. You knew enough. You chose the version that made you feel larger. He opened his mouth. No answer came. Diane entered the hallway with Vanessa, Noah, and Paul behind her. Diane's face was pale. What exactly have you done? She demanded. I accepted an award. You took Vanessa's company. Vanessa transferred control because she could not pay her suppliers. Vanessa stepped forward. You set me up. I did not order your inventory. I did not lease your car. I did not spend the loan money on a New York trip. Diane turned toward her. What trip? Vanessa froze. Noah looked at his wife. I continued. The review showed more than $70,000 in personal spending. That's a lie, Vanessa said. Then show Noah the accounts. Diane's voice became quiet. You told me every dollar went into expansion. It was business development. You bought a car. I needed it for clients. You told me the company was profitable. It would have been if Claire hadn't taken control. No, I said, it would have closed. Vanessa pointed at me. You always hated that Diane believed in me. I hated that you stole my idea and then used it to humiliate me. Diane looked between us. What idea? The appointment-only studio, I said. I gave Vanessa that plan in your kitchen. Vanessa shook her head. That was one conversation. You repeated it almost word for word. You never did anything with it. I was building Lawson and Reed. You were playing business from a rented desk. Maya had entered the hallway behind me. She folded her arms. Those rented desks now employ 51 people. Vanessa said nothing. Noah stepped away from his wife. How much of Alder and Vine do you actually own? She looked at him. Enough. How much? 28%, I said. Noah closed his eyes. Diane stared at Vanessa as if seeing her for the first time. Years of favoritism began collapsing in her face. Not because she suddenly understood what she had done to me, because the daughter-in-law she had chosen as proof of her judgment had made her look foolish. Ethan looked back at me. What happens to Mercer Homeworks? That depends on whether you follow the recovery plan. And the loan, that was the third layer. I removed one envelope from my bag and handed it to him. The bank sold the $840,000 loan in the spring. Lawson and Reed purchased it. Diane's breath caught. You control the loan on my house. Yes. You stole my home. You used your home as collateral. You signed the papers. After Ethan told me to sign or leave, everyone looked at him. Paul's face changed. You said that. Ethan did not answer. I continued. You have 90 days to refinance, sell unnecessary assets, or present a realistic repayment plan. I am not demanding immediate payment. I am giving you more time than the bank intended to. Diane reached for the envelope. Ethan held it away from her. Inside were 2 documents. The loan notice and my divorce filing. Ethan saw the second page. His face collapsed. Claire, I moved out this morning. You filed for divorce. Yes. Without talking to me, I have been talking to you for 5 years. I didn't know you were this unhappy. Every time I told you, you explained why I shouldn't be. He lowered his voice. We can fix this. Number. You don't know that. I do. I can change. Maybe. Then give me a chance. I looked at the man I had once planned to grow old beside. I will not remain available as the reward for your improvement. His eyes filled. Was any of it real? Yes. That answer hurt him more than anger would have. I loved you. I gave up a career because I trusted you. I cared for your father. I helped your company. I kept asking you to stand beside me. I failed. Yes. I'm saying it now. You're saying it after a ballroom applauded me. He looked down at the papers. Paul stepped forward. He rested both hands on his cane. Claire took care of me when she owed me nothing, he said. Diane turned toward him. This is not the time. It should have been the time years ago. She stared at him. Paul looked at me. I saw how they treated you. I stayed quiet because it made the house easier. Noah swallowed. So did I. I looked at both men. Silence made it easier for you, not for me. Paul nodded. I know. For once, he did not ask me to make him feel better. Diane's voice sharpened. After everything this family gave you, what did you give me, Diane? A home. You gave me a bedroom in exchange for managing your life. We included you. You photographed the family on a day you knew I was gone. That was years ago. You made me eat Christmas dinner beside the sink. You were helping. You called me useful for cleaning and signing. You misunderstood. Number. I held her eyes. I understood too late. She had no response. Vanessa began crying. Noah did not comfort her. Ethan held the divorce papers in both hands. Do you still love me? I thought about the food bank shelf, the Thai takeout, the flashlights during the storm. I loved the man who listened when I spoke. He looked hopeful for 1 second. I haven't seen him in years. The hope disappeared. I turned toward the ballroom doors. Maya waited beside me. Behind us, the Mercer family stood in the hallway with 3 truths they could no longer explain away. Vanessa had not built what they believed. Diane had risked her house for an image. And Ethan had spent years looking directly at his wife without ever seeing her. I walked away. No one tried to stop me. Consequences did not arrive in one dramatic explosion. Real life is slower than that. Diane's house was sold the following spring. Lawson and Reed did not force an immediate sale. The family chose it after realizing refinancing would require payments they could not afford. Diane called me once before the closing. You could stop this. I could pay the debt for you. That is what family does. Was I family when you left me out of the portrait? She became silent. Was I family at Christmas? That is not the same thing. It is exactly the same thing. You called me family whenever you needed something from me. She began crying. In the past, her tears would have made me apologize. That day, I let the silence remain. Mercer Homework survived. Ethan sold the oversized showroom and returned to smaller renovation projects. Lawson and Reed continued overseeing the recovery because 21 employees should not lose their jobs to satisfy my anger. Ethan followed the plan. For the first time in his career, he stopped presenting every good decision as his own. Whether that humility lasted, I do not know. Alder and Vine continued under new management. Vanessa was offered a salaried creative role with no control over company money. She called the offer insulting and resigned. Noah left her several months later. Her misuse of money was not the only reason. It was simply the lie that forced him to examine all the others. Paul moved into a small condominium near his therapy center. He sent me a Christmas card containing 1 photograph. It had been taken at Walter's funeral. Walter sat in a chair near the reception hall and I stood beside him. It was the only Mercer family photograph in which he had insisted I remain at the center. I placed it near his workbench. Ethan called often during the first months of our separation. At first, he talked about the house and the business. Later, his messages became apologies. He apologized for Christmas, for the family portrait, for taking credit for my work, for calling Lawson and Reed a hobby, for the loan. Some apologies were specific enough to tell me he had finally begun examining what happened, rather than simply trying to escape the consequences. Almost a year after the award ceremony, I answered one of his calls. I understand something now, he said. What? You didn't hide your company from me. Number. You told me. I just kept deciding it couldn't be important. I sat beside the window of my apartment above Morning June Bakery. Yes, I don't know why I did that. You do. He was quiet. Because if your work mattered, then what I asked you to give up mattered too. Yes, and I would have had to admit what it cost you. Yes. He took a slow breath. I'm sorry. I know. Is there any chance we could start over? I looked down at the street. People carried groceries, walked dogs, and left work. Ordinary lives moving forward. I hope you become the man you were when I met you, I said. But I can't build my future around waiting for him to return. This time he did not argue. I understand. We ended the call without anger. That was the final kindness I gave our marriage. An honest ending. Lawson and Reed moved its headquarters into Walter's warehouse. We restored the brick rather than covering it. We kept the old loading doors. The workshop became a meeting room for new business owners. Above Walter's workbench remained the sentence that changed my life. Build until their opinion is no longer relevant. The company continued growing, but growth stopped being the most important part. We created a program for people returning to work after years of unpaid family care. Some had raised children. Some had cared for parents. Some had left jobs because a spouse promised the sacrifice would be temporary. We offered training, mentoring, and small startup grants. At the first graduation, a woman approached me after the ceremony. "My husband says I'm selfish for starting over," she said. "Are you abandoning someone who cannot survive without you?" Number. Are you refusing responsibilities you freely accepted? Number. Then you are not selfish. She began crying. "I don't know who I am anymore." I didn't either. "How did you find out?" I stopped asking the people who benefited from my disappearance. 2 years after the award ceremony, Lawson and Reed held an open house. Morning June provided breakfast. Our clients' employees and program graduates filled the warehouse. Near the entrance, Maya created a photograph wall. It showed our first 2 desks, our folding tables, our first employee. The night we repaired the failed warehouse pilot, the renovation of Walter's building, business owners reopening stores, graduates beginning new careers. At the center was the photograph from the award ceremony. I stood holding the glass award. Maya was on my right. Martin was on my left. Behind us were the employees who had built Lawson and Reed. For years, I had wanted Diane Mercer to place one photograph of me in her hallway. I believed being included in her frame would prove I belonged. Standing before my own wall, I finally understood. Sometimes you are missing from the family photograph because you were never meant to spend your life begging for space inside someone else's picture. Sometimes you are supposed to build the wall yourself. Choose the photographs and fill it with people who never required you to disappear before they called you family. So let me ask you, would you have signed the loan? Would you have stayed long enough to rebuild your life safely? Or would you have walked away the first night your husband allowed his family to seat you beside the kitchen sink? Whatever your answer, remember this. Your dignity does not begin when people finally recognize your value. It begins when you stop giving them the authority to decide it.